weeks later.
Delay, but it should arrive already.
For many consumers, a delayed parcel may seem like a simple delivery problem. However, behind the delay involves global shipping route, geopolitical tension, and the complex network connecting global countries around the world. Every product we receive has to travel through a global maritime network. One of the most important connecting between the Asia and Europe is the Suez Canal Road. However, since late 2023, attack on commercial vessels in the Red Sea forced many ship companies to avoid this route. This alternative route increased the sailing distance, fuel consumption, operational costs, and the uncertainty throughout the global supply chain. Before we begin our investigation, let us introduce the article selected for this analysis. Our group selected the research article title is Maritime Container Port Reconfiguration under the Geopolitical Disruption and AIS-based multi-scale analysis. We selected this article because the Red Sea crisis was a major geopolitical disruption affecting global maritime transportation. It not only changed shipping routes, but also reshaped port competitiveness and maritime network, providing a valuable insight into how container port respond to disruption. Therefore, this video aims to analyze the research problem, methodology, key findings, and implications of this study, while understanding how political disrupt reshape Maritime container port. Now, let us begin our maritime investigation. But this disruption raised a deeper question. Did the Red Sea crisis truly reshape the competitive hierarchy of Maritime container port? Or did it simple acceleration changes that were already happening?
Since late 2023, Red Sea attack disrupt the traditional Asia to Europe shipping route that the Suez Canal, forcing many shipping companies to reroute the vessel around the Cape of Good Hope. Although previous study mainly focused on the route changes and logistic costs, limited research has examined how such disruptions reshape the Mediterranean port network and competitiveness. Therefore, this study investigates which port gain advantage, which port decline, and how geopolitical disruption affect the port resilience.
To answer this question, the researchers analyzed vessel movement and change in Mediterranean port network. Let's begin.
The study adopts a quantitative research approach based on the automatic identification system, also called AIS data. The researcher analyzed approximately 6,600 container vessels from the IHS Maritime database, including information such as vessel positions, routed, port call, and capacity. By comparing vessel movement 120 days before and 120 days after the first major Red Sea attack, the study identified changes in maritime connectivity and port activities. The research covered major Mediterranean container ports across the both western and eastern regions to examine how different ports respond to the disruptions.
The first findings show that eastern Mediterranean ports experienced the greatest negative impact. Port sales and periods recorded significant decline because many large container vessels avoided the Suez Canal and changed their shipping route.
In contrast, Western Mediterranean ports demonstrate stronger resilience. Ports such as Tangiers Med and Algeciras benefit from their strategic locations near the Strait of Gibraltar and their existing connections with the global shipping networks.
The disruption was especially significant for ultra-large container vessels. These vessels depend heavily on major Asia-Europe shipping routes, meaning route change create greater impact on their operations and port selection.
However, Tangiers Med success was not created by the Red Sea crisis alone. Its competitiveness was already supported by infrastructure developments, effective governance, logistic capability, and also strong partnership with shipping companies.
The authors identify several factors explaining why some ports perform better than others. Firstly, geographically, location play an important role. Port positions near alternative maritime routes gain advantage when the vessel avoid the Suez Canal. Secondly, integration into the global shipping network influence the port resilience. Ports with strong connections to shipping alliances were better able to maintain vessel service during disruptions.
Thirdly, strong relationship between terminals and shipping companies improve coordination and operational stability.
Finally, efficient road builds and industrial connections allow ports to manage changing cargo flows more effectively.
On these factors, the authors propose 4 possible resilience pathways. Adaptive resilience refers to maintaining operation during disruption. Adaptive resilience represents the ability to adjust strategies. Transformative resilience involves major improvement to enhance future competitiveness. Meanwhile, structural rupture represents a significant change in the existing port network structure.
In conclusion, the Red Sea crisis significantly reshaped the Mediterranean container port system. While the Eastern Mediterranean port experiencing declining competitiveness, several West Mediterranean ports demonstrate the strongest resilience and gain strategy advantage.
The study also highlighted that the AIS has developed beyond simple vessel tracking and can serve as a strategy tool for analyzing changes in maritime network and port competitiveness.
The author therefore suggests that port competitiveness depends on not only geographical advantage but also an infrastructure, governance, carrier relationship, and hinterland connectivity. The case of Tangier also suggests that existing port capability may play an important role in determining which port benefit for disruption.
But does this evidence prove that a new Mediterranean port hierarchy has emerged? Or did the crisis simple acceleration advantage that already exists?
The authors claim that Red Sea crisis significantly disrupt Mediterranean's maritime connectivity. According to UDPL3303, the Suez Canal normally handles around 12 to 15% of global trade. Following the Red Sea attacks, the traffic through the canal declined around 42%, forcing major shipping lines to reroute the vessels around the Cape of Good Hope. Therefore, the evidence strongly supports the authors' arguments that those crises cause significant operational disruption to maritime connectivity.
However, significant disruption does not necessarily mean that the overall network becomes less resilient. OECD 2024 found that shipping network adapted rapidly to alternative routes, while daily trade volume in Mediterranean port remained relatively stable. This suggests that the network absorbed the disruption through route adaptations, rather than experiencing a complete breakdown in connectivity. Therefore, the evidence supports the view that the crisis disrupts maritime connectivity, but is less conclusive in proving the emergence of a fundamentally new and permanent port hierarchy.
The article also suggests that role restructuring affected versus gradual cargo flow and port connectivity. This is supported by Avis, Rastogi, and Euribina 2024, who reported that major carriers such as Maersk and Harbour Lorry suspended operation through the Suez Canal and diverted vessels around the Cape of Good Hope. This added approximately 3,000 and 3,500 nautical miles and extended Asia-Europe voyage by around 7 to 10 days. These longer routes disrupted established sailing pattern and increased pressure on vessel schedule and cargo flow. Hence, this supports the article interpretation because longer routes and extended voyage time directly affected shipping schedule and connectivity.
However, longer road and greater operation disruption do not necessarily translate into long-term changes in port competitiveness. The World Bank Group 2025 also highlighted that port performance depends on multiple structural factors including operational efficiency, infrastructure quality, organization capability, and geographic advantages. This suggests that the crisis may have influenced port competitiveness, but it was not the only factor shaping port performance. Therefore, the author findings should be interpreted alongside existing structural advantage rather than attributing changes in competitiveness to the disruption alone.
The authors argue that the routing around the Cape of Good Hope strengthens Western Mediterranean hubs, particularly Tangier Bay and Algeciras. This is supported by notables Hararevis and Correlevans 2024, who argue that the routing increased the strategic importance of Western Mediterranean hubs. This suggests that the Red Sea crisis created favorable conditions for the Western Mediterranean ports to further benefit from the existing strategic positions.
However, this raises another question. Were these advantages actually created by the crisis? UNCTAD's Review of Maritime Transport 2023 reported that the Tangier was already an important Mediterranean transshipment hub before the crisis, with growing container throughput and connection to around 40 African ports. This indicates that Tangier already possesses significant competitive advantage before the Red Sea disruptions. Therefore, tension met stronger performance reflect the reinforcements of existing competitive advantage rather than the creation of the new advantage caused by the Red Sea crisis.
Overall, the evidence support the view that this crisis disrupt the Mediterranean port, but existing structural advantage also reshape how this port respond. And this raises our next question: could vertical integration be one of these capabilities? One capability highlight that in this study is vertical integration, where shipping lines are involved in terminal ownership and operation. The study suggests that this integration can strengthen port resilience during the period of disruption. But how strong is the relationship? To evaluate the author argument, we examine the evidence from three perspectives.
From port level perspective, the study suggests that vertical integrations can help ports secure more stable cargo flows. According to Notable Roderick and Paris 2009, Chapter 4.1 shipping companies that invest in terminals facility can secure long-term access to strategic ports. So this creates a traffic catcher's effect, where affiliated shipping lines are more likely to maintain resource costs at their own terminals during periods of uncertainties. Therefore, the evidence supports the article's argument that vertical integration can help ports secure cargo flows and maintain connectivity during disruptions.
However, securing cargo flow does not mean that the ownership structure alone determines port performance. Minius and Wilsmeyer 2016, together with Notable Roderick and Paris 2019, Chapter 4.1, suggests that port development is also influenced by institution conditions, relationship with inland transport provider, and existing development paths. Therefore, while the evidence supports a role for vertical integration, it does not support treating ownership as the role explanation for port resilience and performance.
The article also suggests that vertical integration can improve operational coordination during disruption. From an operational perspective, Notable, Roderick and Paris 2019 Chapter 8.3 explain that shared ownership can improve coordination between shipping line and terminal operators, including vessel scheduling, berth allocation, and cargo handling. This suggests that closer coordination between shipping line and terminal can reduce uncertainty and support faster operational responses during disruption. Therefore, the evidence provides support for the article agreement that vertical integration can contribute to operation resilience.
However, better coordination does not necessarily mean that the vertically integrated terminal was always perform better. UNCTAD's review of Maritime Transport 2023 and the Wong et al. 2023 suggests that vertical integration may also create a competition concern and excessive market power. This suggests that the benefit of integration may come with trade-off and depends on how the integrated resources and relationships are managed. Therefore, the article argument is reasonable, but operation resilience cannot be explained by the ownership structure alone.
From a strategic perspective, the article suggests that vertical integration can strengthen our port competitive positions. Notable Roderick and Paris 2019 Chapter 4.1 explain that the great port operators can leverage relationship with the shipping companies and inland transport providers to negotiate more favorable conditions. So this can improve access to resource and strengthen operational stability during periods of disruptions.
However, does critical integration itself create a competitive advantage? While Roderick 2024 and Ng et al. 2026 suggest that port competitiveness is also shared by existing structural advantages, such as hinterland connectivity and established market position. This suggests that vertical integration may reinforce existing advantage rather than independently create a long-term competitiveness.
Overall, vertical integration can strengthen port resilience, but it cannot create the resilience on its own. So this leads us another question. How reliable is the AIS evidence behind this conclusion? But how far can AIS actually support the study conclusion? To answer this, we examine both its strength and the limitation.
The author claimed the use of AIS provided a strong basis for analyzing actual versus movement during the Red Sea crisis. Young et al. Reported that AIS provided high-frequency, real-time information on vessel position and sailing pattern across the global commercial fleet. This means that rather than depending only on reported of perceived behavior, the researcher can directly observe how vessels actually move. Therefore, AIS provides credible operational evidence for identifying changes in maritime connectivity.
However, this also reveals an important limitation of the study. AIS can tell us what the vessel did, but does not necessarily why they did it. Gaudet, Cordera, and Alice 2026 point out that the AIS capture vessel behavior, but not the intention, commercial negotiations, or internal decision-making process of the shipping company and port authorities. Therefore, while the AIS support the auto-analysis of the operational changes, it has a limited ability to explain the organizational reason behind those challenges.
The last AIS data set is another strength of the study. William Beckles and Miller 2024 highlighted that AIS data can be used to analyze trade routes, port congestions, and vessel mobility. So this capability allows the researchers to identify narrow changes across a large number of vessels and thus providing strong visual evidence for changes in maritime activity.
However, a larger data set does not necessarily mean that the study can explain all the factors behind these changes. UNCTAD 2024 note that although AIS identified changes in vessel behavior, it does not capture wider market and economic factors behind these changes, such as changes in container rates, fuel costs, and insurance costs, related costs. This means that the AIS data can show the routing patterns changed, but it cannot fully determine whether those changes were driven by the shipping costs, market conditions, or other economic pressure. Therefore, the study would be stronger if AIS findings were interpreted alongside additional economic evidence.
The study also uses AIS-based port call data to compare changes in port activity. This provides a useful way to identify which port experienced increase or decrease in maritime activity during the crisis. William, Michael, and Barrow expect that AIS-based estimate closely follow the threshold in official statistics. Although AIS-based port call figures are higher than official statistics in most quarters, they still follow similar trend over time. Therefore, AIS provides critical experience for changes in maritime activity.
However, identifying changes in port activity is not the same as proving changes in port competitiveness. A port may receive more vessel call because of a temporary rerouting effect, but this does not necessarily mean that its underlying competitive position has fundamental changed. Jonas, Fabrius, and Cruzwell 2023 highlight that combining quantitative and qualitative evidence can provide deeper insight and stronger reference. Therefore, AIS-based findings should be interpreted alongside other evidence to determine whether changes in vessel activity actually reflect changes in port competitiveness.
Overall, AIS provides strong evidence of what changed, but not necessarily why it changed or whether those changes are permanent. Based on the article evaluation and our discussion, several recommendations can be proposed to the strengthen maritime resilience.
First, port should strengthen crisis preparedness and operational resilience. UNCTAD 2024 reported that Suez Canal traffic declined due to Red Sea disruption, highlighting the vulnerability of major maritime routes to geopolitical shock. To respond to such disruption, ports should adopt risk management tools such as scenario planning, business continuity planning, and crisis management. These measures can support port operation before, during, and after a disruption. Ports should also strengthen communication among key decision makers to improve coordination and enable faster responses.
Second, port should focus on long-term competitiveness rather than temporary benefits from disruptions. According to the UNCTAD 2019, even shipping networks adapt during the Red Sea crisis, the port should continue strengthening their existing competitive capabilities, particularly operational efficiency, technological capacity, and also connectivity. For example, Stenches may demonstrate this because it was really a strong development hub before the crisis, handling 7.5 million containers and connecting to around 40 applicant ports in 2022. Therefore, recent creators traffic increases should be used to strengthen existing advantages rather than treated as evidence of a new port hierarchy.
Third, maritime stakeholders should adopt a multi-source data approach for better decision-making. Neither Toribio and Alex 2026 acknowledge that AIS capture vessel behavior, but not the commercial negotiation and internal decision behind it. For example, world risk premiums increased during the Red Sea crisis, showing that important economic factors cannot be observed through AIS alone. Therefore, AIS should be combined with economic and qualitative evidence to provide a more comprehensive understanding of maritime risk.
Although this study provides important insight, several areas require further investigation.
Future studies should combine AIS analysis with interview involving port, authority, terminal operator, and shipping company. It would help researchers understand not only what happened, but also why company made certain decisions.
Second, researchers should examine whether the changes become permanent. This is because the current study only focuses on the early stage of the destruction only, hence long-term research is required to determine whether Western development elements represent a temporary response or permanent shift.
Third, future research should include financial variables. The Red Sea crisis affected not only vessel routes but also insurance premiums, fuel consumption, and freight costs. Including these factors would provide a more complete understanding of maritime network changes.
In conclusion, Red Sea crisis significantly influenced global maritime network. It changed the vessel route, affected port connectivity, and created different outcomes among the Mediterranean ports.
However, our evaluation suggests that the crisis should not be viewed as the only factor determining port competitiveness.
Existing advantages including strategic location, infrastructure, governance, partnership, and hinterland connectivity remain essential.
The case of Kendrick made demonstrate that ports with strong foundations can transform disruption into opportunity.
Ultimately, successful ports are not simply those that survive uncertainty. They are the ports that adapt, innovate, and remain competitive in an increasing uncertain global maritime environment.
Okay, thank you for watching.